Rich Ross, everybody, come on up. Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about cephalopods and how they make sweet, sweet love. So, my name is Rich Ross. I've got bald cats. I've got a wife who's a stone-cold fox and likes cephalopods as much as I do. I've got a daughter who can't control her appetite, so be careful sitting next to her there. And I got this cool job at the Academy at the Snyder Aquarium at the California Academy of Sciences where I get to, thank you, I lucked into this job and I think it's amazing, and I get to dive in this 200,000-gallon reef tank. I did that this afternoon. But more germane, I get to work with cephalopods. And this is just a few of them that we have on display at work right now. That is a broad-cup cuttlefish, and they do kind of cool color shows. That's a coconut octopus that we collected in the Philippines earlier this year. This is the flamboyant cuttlefish, which is just the hippest freaking thing I've ever seen. Yeah, oh, he's sneaking through. Oh, we didn't put the sound in. Oh, well, that's all right. This is not that important sound. And we breed these guys. It's a dwarf cuttle. We'll get into more of these as we go along. And we've also got, I think there's one more shot here of, yeah, this is a giant Pacific octopus, which Nancy actually takes care of. Seth does now. It's pretty cool to have a big giant thing attack you like that. But to get into what's going on here, we'll talk about, just to set the scene, about morphology, because it's kind of important that we know what we're talking about. Because if I say, yeah, he sticks it in her buccal mass, it doesn't mean anything to you. It's going to be useless, right? So cephalopods, the deal with cephalopods is they have, they're mollusks, so they're like snails, right? And they have all their limbs extend in a ring around the mouth parts. So the mouth parts are here. This is the bottom is facing us here. All the limbs come around the mouth. And most cephalopods have 8 arms, and then they have 2 tentacles. The octopus doesn't, but squid and cuttlefish and things like that have 2 tentacles, which are these long things here. And the tentacles usually reach out and snag the food. They've got a tentacular club at the end. Some of them have big hooks on them, and they get really nasty, and you wouldn't want one to grab onto you. But generally, the difference between arms and tentacles, arms seem to have suckers that go up and down the length of them, and tentacles will be smooth all the way up and down the length of them, except maybe at the club at the end there. They have a ring-like brain that sits right about there, and their esophagus actually goes through their brain. So it's very important that they chew their food well. And to do that, they have what's called a buccal mass, which is their mouth parts, and they have a beak like a parrot, and then a radula, which is like a tongue like cheese grater. And so they take big bites with the beak, and then the radula grates it up, and then it goes through the esophagus and passes through their brain and goes on to all these other inner parts. What else do we need to know? The mantle, this here is the mantle. A lot of people call that the head. It's really not the head. It's more like the torso. It's where all the kind of organs sit. It's the bag of stuff that makes them go. They do really good. They've got copper blazed isn't a word. Copper-based blood, hemolymph, which is very bizarre and gives them kind of blue blood. It's very strange if you have to draw blood on one of them. It's bright blue. It's really pretty neat. They have great color changing abilities and texture changing abilities. Most of them have ink, and we don't know if the ink is toxic or not, and most of them have some kind of toxin. Basically, a lot of what we know about cephalopods is not enough. There's just not enough research on them to really know what's going on. So it's very exciting to be involved in them, and I'm very lucky to work at a place that allows me to explore them. Some more cephalopod facts. There's over 1,000 species. That's a lot of them. The biggest one I get, the other ones are all interesting. We could do a whole talk on them. Well, I could do a whole talk on them because I think they're cool. But is what's the plural of octopus? Is anyone... It's actually a trick question because there's many that are acceptable. Octopus really comes from Greek, so you don't want to really call them octopi because that's a Latin bastardization of it. So octopuses is generally what we accept, right? But when you bring a word into English, which we've done, you get to Latinize it. So octopi is perfectly acceptable as well. But if you wanted to be totally proper, you would say octopodes. You would, except if you said that, people would hit you. So don't do that. Don't do that. And you can read those facts. What else do we need to know? They're fantastic hunters. Their color-changing abilities and their texture-changing abilities let them really blend into things so you can't see them. It helps them evade predators, and it also helps them eat stuff. And they will eat anything. They grow so incredibly quickly, and some, you know, their conversion rate from food to body mass in some squids, from what I understand, can be up to 90%. I was reading one study the other day where it was actually more than 100%, which is kind of mind-boggling. So, but I don't know if you can believe every study you read. As they are fantastic hunters, they're also delicious. They're all muscle. They're made of yummy foodness. So everybody eats them, from everyone, starfish to whales, and of course people as well. In the States, we don't eat them that much. We calamari pretty much, and then some taco if you're really into sushi. But in other countries around the world, they're a huge industry. And I think in 1999 was the last statistic I got, and I think the total catch was over 3 million tons, worth over $6 billion $1999. So it's a huge industry. They're also used for a bunch of other stuff, quack medicines. This is the best. You can cure constipation and cure diarrhea with the same thing. It's totally awesome if you're like me and love insane quacky things. Ink has been used, or your sepia tone comes from cuttlefish ink. Sepia is the genus. Calcium treats for birds, and of course nautilus shells for wedding rings, because nothing says I love you like a dead animal. So my first, because this is about porn and ceph porn, my first experience with ceph porn was at home. When before I worked at the academy, when I was just a lowly person who liked ceph porn. It was very strange. My wife, I've always liked these animals, and we saw some cuttlefish for sale, and they were actually eating, which is almost an unheard of thing. They don't live very long, right? So usually when they come through the pet trade, they're usually adults. So if they only live a year and you get an adult animal, it's not so great, because it could be 8 months old when you get it, and you're going to have it for a few months. But we got some, and she allowed me to set up this thing. And this was with dwarf cuttlefish, Sepia bendensis. And we didn't know anything about breeding this particular species. Nobody knew it. Nobody had really kept them before. So I built this kind of complex condo with these dividers in it, with doors in each divider, and I had opaque doors and transparent doors so I could let them see each other or not see each other, because if you put them together, sometimes they eat each other, and that's not helpful for mating in the long term. So I had two, and I got them through the doors, and this is the first bit of ceph porn here. It should come up right here. It's really grainy. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And I took out the divider, and it swims through, and it's like, oh yeah, give it to me. So that it comes up in slow motion too, and I was so excited about this. It was. I had done it, because I heard mating could last seconds, or it could last for an hour, and I didn't know, and so this happened, and it turned out that this was hardcore gay porn. These were two male animals, and I only learned that later on, and so that was fine, but it didn't give me the result I happened to be looking for at the time. So here's some sex terms for cephalopods that we kind of need to know for this particular discussion here. The penis, that should be self-explanatory, except it's not in cephalopods. Some of them actually have a penis that they use to transfer their genetic material, but most of them don't. They have an internal penis, and it is attached to what's called a hectocotylist, which was actually coined by Aristotle, and everyone thought he was crazy for that, and then I think in the 1800s the term came back. That's a weird thing to say. And what the hectocotylus is a modified arm that the penis attaches to inside, and there's a groove along it that the spermatophore, which is a cluster of sperm cells, travels along this groove, and then it gets held by this thing called a ligula, which is at the end of the hectocotylus. It's a club-like thing, and it's got erectile tissue. It's all titillating and exciting. And he takes the spermatophore and shoves it into her buccal mass, which is her mouth parts, so go figure. And it sits in there, and then as she lays eggs, she can rub the egg against the spermatophore to fertilize it as she puts it out. This doesn't work in all cephalopods. It's an insanely diverse group. So take the generalness with the Discovery Channel generalness, which is, it could be completely wrong. Then the other terms is Cephalopods, which means basically you have sex once and you die, or one breeding cycle. And then there's Heteroparis, which means you can have sex a lot, which is preferable for me. So these terms will come up in the next few minutes here, and it'll help. These are graphics that mean nothing to anybody but me, so we're going to move on. We're going to talk about some different animals. This is called the paper nautilus, or the argonaut. And it's kind of one of the most famous kind of sex stories, one of the kind of ones people really latch onto. This thing isn't really a nautilus at all. It's an octopus, and this is the female octopus, and she makes this kind of egg case here that she kind of lives in, and she floats around in it. It's kind of like an underwater dirigible, and it's recently been found out she keeps a bubble of air in it that allows her to control her buoyancy. It's freaking cool. And so that's the female, and what happens is the male, we're not really sure, but the male swims along, and either he goes right up to her, and he's much smaller, he's like 10 times smaller than her. Either he goes right up to her, or he comes near her, and he keeps the hectocotylus in a pouch, and then he sees a chick, and then the hectocotylus comes out, and then it jumps off of his body. And it's like this detachable cephalopod penis, and it swims through the water and impregnates her. And it's kind of like how we got my daughter. And actually, this is one of the hectocotylus, and the deal is when they first found it, they thought it was a parasitic worm. That's how weird it is. And only later it was found that no, that's the male organ. And there's another animal that does that. This is called the blanket octopus, which is a completely insane animal. This is the female, this is the male. This gets about 2 meters long, this is about 2 centimeters long. So it does the same kind of thing. It looks like this one swims up closer and breaks off the arm, and it goes right in and stays in the gill cavity. And there's been, and they're whores. These animals are whores because there have been female blanket octopus found with 6 or 7 different hectocotylus in their cavities. So they're just like, swim into me, baby. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. Stay away from them. You'll get diseases. This is the nautilus, and they mate more head-to-head, which is more like the missionary position of cephalopods. They don't have a hectocotylus. These guys actually have 90-plus tentacles, so it's a little different than other cephalopods. And they have a modified tentacle called a spadix. But again, that's really dorky to know. The male has a spadix, the female doesn't. Next, what do we got? We got squids. So this is an Australian squid, and they're kind of acrobatic. There's many different ways for squids to do it. There's the Caribbean reef squid does it with the female in front. It's kind of like this doggy style thing. And it's kind of like this reverse cowboy thing going on here. But you can see the hectocotylus comes out and goes into her mantle, and then he is all excited. These guys here are the California market squid, loligo. I think they're called dorytoothus now. These are the ones you eat if you're at a restaurant. And they're just kinky. Yeah! Do it! I just love this music. It's just ridiculous. So when the male latches on, he'll turn his arms red. We have no idea why, and then the whole thing will quit, because apparently Time Machine is important right now. How did that happen? Come on, we were just getting into them. Back up. Okay. So the interesting thing about these guys is as the female is laying eggs, the male they'll still mate with her. They don't care, and then they die. They die right there while they're mating. It's just an orgy of sex and death. It's awesome. These guys here. This is a hook squid that's about 3/4 of a meter long, and these guys have penises. And actually interesting, it's a squid penis aficionado. Squids actually have the longest, let me read this so I get this right, they have the longest penis length to body size ration of any mobile animal. And in fact, they are only one-upped by barnacles, who clearly need long penises because they don't move. And they don't squirt anything out in the water. So this is one that it looks like before you cut it up, because apparently we like to cut things up. But this one is cut up. And you can see here, this is the penis. So the question was, I mean, this is somebody else is showing their penis. The question was, I mean, the reason they have, other cephalopods have a hectocotylus is, if you've got these long arms and you're trying to impregnate someone, why do you need an extra organ to do that, right? So you've got this long thing, you might as well use it. We didn't know, or people had no, we still really not sure, but how did they impregnate these, the females? And crazy ideas came up, like they would shoot, they would shoot darts of spermatophores through the water like missiles or lasers, and they would shoot into the female. But what happened was, a little while ago when they cut one of these open, apparently cutting it open got it really excited. And the penis grew, and I think the animal was 67 centimeters, and the penis ended up being about 67 centimeters as well. It was also so excited it ejaculated spermatophores. So that's awesome. Oh my God, that's so awesome. So that's a market squid. This guy here, this is Architeuthis dux. And that's a much bigger squid. They don't get to be 60 feet. That's crazy. That's like if you take a squid and stretch it out as long as you can and then measure it. And they're very elastic, so you can stretch it out to 100 feet and go, see, that's how long it was. But they're not really that long. The mantles on these guys get about 2 meters. The colossal squid, Mesonicoteuthis, is about the same length, but it way overmasses these guys. But now I'm rambling about stuff that's not germane to this talk. This is Architeuthis, the giant squid, and this is a picture of Steve O'Shea, one of the premier giant squid researchers, playing with squid jizz. That's spermatophores, and that's a penis. It's very exciting. So these guys, not much is known about these animals. There's very little video of them alive at all, so we don't even know about behavior. But what has been found, this is a close-up of a tentacle of a female Architeuthis. And in here, embedded inside the tentacle, or the arm, excuse me, it's not the tentacle, the arm, are spermatophores. So somehow, the penis is coming out and humping the arm and putting the spermatophores inside of it. We find this pretty regularly, it seems like, and we have no idea really how the spermatophore then gets to the egg. We're not sure. It could go through the blood, it could be triggered by some kind of egg pheromone when she starts to lay the eggs, and then they come out, they boil out of her arm like some botfly or something like that. But we're not sure, but don't have sex with them. That seems weird. This is kind of my favorite. This is the one I started with. This is Sepia bendensis, again, the cephalopod missionary position. Here's the male and the female. We often see two arms going over the top, and he's reaching around up inside of her mantle there, and I think I have some video coming up on that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very tender. Actually, that's pretty tender. And it can go on for a long time. What we see in the cuttlefish, which is exciting, and we see it in the small animals as well as the big ones, the Australian ones, the Sepia opima, is what's called cross-dressing males and sneaker males. And you'll get males over here fighting each other, and as they're doing that, a smaller male, a sneaker male, will go, hey, you guys are fighting. I'm going to go have sex while you guys are being macho. And goes over there and does it while these guys are like, we're so tough. That seems like a good strategy. You also have male cuttlefish that will put on the coloration and texture of a female, so the males let them swim right by. So that seems like a good skill to do as well. The interesting thing about a lot of the cephalopods is they can actually flush the mantle cavity of the female to prevent sperm competition. So if they grab a female, they'll flush the spermatophore out of there so their spermatophore works. And then they'll guard her for a while. I just can't get enough of this porno music. It's just so much like other music. This here is the flamboyant cuttlefish. It's one of my favorites, Metasepia. It's different from the other cuttlefish. The cuttle bone is much smaller, so it gets its very own genus. And this is kind of one of the holy grails of cephalopod husbandry. These ship very badly. It looks like their entire body is toxic, so you don't want to eat them. And very difficult to breed. So last year we were able to get several of them, and we got them together, and I was making this film. I was filming them one day, and this is the closest I've been ever to being aroused while watching animals. Because this is like a 10-year thing for this to happen for me. It took 10 years for me just to get two at the same time. So the male is there on the left and the female's on the right, and she's just kind of hanging out, and he's like, come on, baby. And you'll be able to see the arm he uses for insertion in a second. There's a close-up. This is like a money shot for that. And here, this arm here is the hectocotylized arm. It's the second or third arm down. You can see the line on it that it's the groove. You can see it's the darker groove. These animals have just amazing flamboyant color displays. And here comes, oh, yes! Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So that's, I hope you marry a man like that, Kayla. That's all I'm saying. So that was the most awesome thing I'd ever seen at the time. This is the spermatophore from the Metasepia. You can see it's a whole bunch of spermatophores in a clump, so you can see really how they put it inside the buccal mass of the female, and then the female can fertilize the eggs as they go. Here's another, this is like the holy grail of cephalopods, of octopus. This is Octopus churcherae, or however you want to pronounce it. And this is a little guy from the Pacific side of Panama or Nicaragua, and it's very small, it's about the size of a quarter, and it's beautiful, and it's awesome. So you can keep it in a small tank. The problem is we can't get them. There's one paper on them from like 1984, and it's got some information on it. And then Roy Caldwell over at UC Berkeley was able to get a couple in the 90s, or get one in the 90s. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, some of them showed up in the trade, and I was able to get one right away. And then I had the gall, there's this cephalopod website, tonmo.com, where if you have any cephalopod questions, go there. It stands for the Octopus News Magazine Online. And we're having a convention in Washington, D.C. this year. It's the 4th convention. So nerdy, it's awesome. And so other people said, we've got one too. And I had the gall to get online and go, you need to send it to me. And to me and Roy. And they sent them, and we ended up with 1 male and 4 females. And it was, there's some good video coming up. And you can tell the male here's got these kind of fuzzy arms. See those kind of fuzz on there, and the female doesn't. And so we were able to get several of them. What do I got here? This is a spermatophore. You can see how very different an octopus spermatophore, at least this species, is from the other spermatophores we've looked at. And so we get this, and this is before I had any kind of professional job in the sciences at all, or in marine husbandry. And so Dr. Roy Caldwell over at UC Berkeley and his grad student at the time, now Dr. Chrissy Hufford, come over to my house late at night one night. This is ridiculous. It's like Van Nuys in the 80s. And they come in, and we set up these little tanks, because you can't just put the octopus together and hope. You got to watch them, because like I said before, sometimes they just eat each other, and you don't know what's going to go on. So it's me and Chrissy and Roy. We're all gathered around the table. My wife and Kaylin are upstairs asleep, I hope. I don't know what they're doing. Thinking's going on downstairs at like 10 o'clock at night. We put these two in a little aquarium, and then we got this. And it was, it's very touching. How he just grabs her. And this went on for about 4 minutes, and you can see here, this is it. It's right in there. You can actually see the groove along the arm there, and she kind of dug into the ground, so she had better traction, and he's pumping away. It was very cool. So, and from that, we were actually able to get a whole bunch of eggs and mating, and it turns out, well, we'll get into that in just a minute. That's not the only strategy. These guys, this is Octopus aculeatus, and they mate very differently. The males will actually strangle each other and kill each other in competition, and they'll mate from a great distance and just hang out like that for a long time, passing the love. And here's your obligatory plumbing shot right there. You can see that's the hustler of ceph porn right there. Very cool stuff. And there's all kinds of different octopus that do it all different ways, and they can last a long time, and they can do it very quickly. And I'm sure you're all titillated now, and you might be tempted to do something like this. And that's Dream of the Fisherman's Wife from the 1800s. It's a Japanese woodblock. It's actually a three-way, so that's kind of interesting, but I'd avoid that. If you are excited about this stuff, there's a new magazine out that you can grab. And then the question, of course, is what happens the next morning, right? So we're going to I'll show you a little bit about what happens afterwards. This is that paper nautilus, and this is egg mass that hangs down. Apparently it's attached up there. We're doing some work in the Philippines, and they occur there, and when Matt is here, he and I were there this summer, really lucky to go. We actually found a shell of a paper nautilus, so if we can get one, we will try to display it. They've never been displayed before. They're really sensitive. We'll see what happens, but that's a pretty big egg mass, right? Then you got the nautilus. They a totally different strategy. They lay one egg at a time, and the females lay between 6 and 10 eggs in a year, and the eggs, that's the egg right there. It looks like a rock, and they leave it. It takes like 12 months to develop. Most other cephalopods take between 2 and 3 weeks. And this is weird because you don't really usually lay your eggs on another nautilus, so that's just an odd thing, and we had a picture of it because we're dirty. These are like the market squid again, the loligo or the doryteuthis. You get these kind of garlands or festoons, sometimes they're called, and inside are individual eggs, and you get a whole group of the festoons, and then they hatch out. This is one of the deep sea squids, and they kind of guard their egg masses. Some of them do. Some things like the Humboldt squid, they seem to lay like these van-size things of eggs, these kind of giant rafts of eggs. Right on, fertile people. And when this, I guess when this video or this photo was taken, they were freaked out and they detached themselves from the eggs, but it's an interesting strategy to hang on to your eggs like that for a long time. Most of the cuttlefish will lay their eggs one at a time in a cluster that often looks like a bunch of grapes. Again, this is bendensis, and you can see the little embryonic hatchling in there getting ready to come out. They put ink inside the eggs, and they're dark at first most of the time, and as they mature they get bigger and bigger, and they get more and more transparent. And there's a study in the last couple of years that shows that cephalopods inside the egg are much more likely to eat prey items that they see outside the egg while they're in the egg. So that's kind of interesting. So now when we have eggs, I usually put the prey items I want them to feed them in there. We'll see if that ends up panning out. When they're born, they're pretty small. So that's about a 3-day-old. Oh man, I really should have flipped this coin over. That bugs me every time I see it. But they're small, bigger than the ear. The Metasepia lays a different kind of egg and is much more hidey about it. These white eggs. There were some pictures in Mark Norman's book, Cephalopods of the World, that showed this. And when we put the coconut husk in there, or the coconut shell really, she went right in and she laid the eggs in there. So that was fun to see. And then we had here probably one of the first Metasepia hatched in captivity. They're small. They're very cool. Now the Octopus cheshire is a totally different animal. It's what's called a large egg species of octopus. And you can see here the eggs are pretty big. This is the female, and that's the egg. And you can see in there, that's the little octopus getting ready to come out soon enough. And these guys on the large egg species, they come out and they are ready to go. They're just basically little adult octopuses. And you can see here, this is 1 day old, and they look exactly like octopuses except they're bright orange. We were able to get them to 185 days, so that's pretty cool. So if anybody ever hears of cheshire available, please call me, because there's so much more research to do on them. And it turns out that the cheshire is iteroparous, so one of the only octopus we know of that does that. Not only does she lay multiple clutches of eggs and mate between the clutches, but she also eats while she's brooding, which no octopus does. You know, you see all the stories about, there's one going around about the giant Pacific octopus lately for Mother's Day and things like that. Oh, what a giving mother who dies for her 10 million babies or whatever like that. These guys don't do that. I guess they don't care as much about their children. This is a small-egged octopus. You can see the eggs are much smaller. It's a different animal. This is Wonderpus photogenicus. It's pretty. That's its name, I swear. Because it's wonderful to photograph. And it really is. It's a cool animal, and this is one that I was able to get, and we had a bunch of eggs. We did have an Octopus Caribbean vulgaris at work. That's a small egg species, and you can see that's really small. That's a millimeter. So yeah, it's ridiculous. But you can see this. The large egg octopus come out and they're ready to go. They're just like mini adults. These guys are what's called planktonic paralarvae. So it doesn't really look that much like an octopus. So this thing goes and hangs out in the water column for about 35, 45 days. We haven't really cracked being able to raise the paralarvae yet. The feeding them is crazy, and keeping them so they feel healthy has been pretty hard as well. And then after 35, 45 days, they settle out and become more like real octopuses. And here we have some footage of the octopus eggs actually hatching. We came in one day, and actually it was Matt goes, Rich, they're hatching, come down here. And we were able to get some video. So that's pretty wild. I'd never seen that before. It gets a little more wild in a second. That's a big clutch of eggs that she laid. Usually it's underneath, but I turned it up so the public could see it. And as they started hatching, she came over and started shaking them. I guess it's like squatting. I don't know. And then, I mean, literally thousands of them swimming around. So very, very cool animals with a very interesting life cycle and a lot of sex. And I want to thank all these people, especially the fair use laws. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Any questions? Yeah. How many of the eggs survive? No clue. It's once they go out into the water column, very difficult to track. I suppose we could try to put some kind of tracking device on them, but it would probably weigh them down. Yeah, no, I wish. This is the thing about the cephalopod research is a lot of the questions are like, who knows? You would expect not many of them. So, yeah.
A related question, what did you do with the thousands of octopuses that hatched?
What did we do with the thousands of octopuses that hatch? We tried desperately to keep them alive. There's one paper out from some people in Spain who kept Octopus vulgaris, the Mediterranean version, and their paper says that they got them to settle, I think 55 days, and then and metamorphosize, and that was it. And then apparently that was the end of their study, so they euthanized them or something. We don't know what happened afterwards. We were only able to get them to about 22 days. So we're hoping next season maybe to try it again and see what we can do. Yeah? What did I do? Oh, what did we do to try to keep them alive? Everything we could think of. We set them up in special tanks called a chrysal, which is a slow-moving kind of body of water, and the water moves in kind of a gyre and a circular pattern. And the idea is that the paralarvae won't get smashed into the walls of the aquarium at all, and it'd be more like the open ocean. But it turned out leaving them on, the ones we left on display actually lasted longer. Now that could be from anything. That's the problem. It could have been a water quality issue, it could have been a food issue. On the tank on display, there might have been smaller food that they were eating than we had in the specialized tank that we put them in. We put them in a couple specialized tanks. So we just basically, we try everything we can. In the near future, we're going to be setting up an area back of house that's specifically for raising larval animals. So, because what's happening now when this happens is we go, oh my God, we better do something. Except we don't say, oh my God, because we're scientists. And we run around and we try to figure out something to do, and we do the best that we can. And we're hoping that having something set up, ready to go all the time, will increase our success rate. Yeah? Is there any data about the survival rate? Not that I've been able to find. Yeah, it's just don't know. Yeah. Oh, anyway, I was thinking the same thing. In the back or the balcony? You guys are in the middle, so you're being ignored right now, as per Bart. Yes.
What's the longest time a cephalopod lives? Which one is it?
The longest time a cephalopod lives?
Mates.
Mates? That would be me. No, the longest one that's coming to mind right now is about 45 minutes. And I believe that's either Octopus marginatus or Octopus aculeatus, but I'd have to double or triple check that to know that I was getting you something accurate. Yeah?
I have a question about sperm wars, because the blanket octopus is not the only four cephalopods.
That's true, yes.
So what do you think or know about which sperm gets to actually fertilize the eggs?
From what I can tell, it's up to the female. They can hoard sperm, it looks like. I mean, unless a male comes in and flushes her out and she has no choice about it. And there seems to be some indication that she can keep multiple spermatophores from multiple males. So take from that what you can. It's probably her in a lot of the cases. I would suppose she could eject the spermatophore too if she doesn't like it. Anyone else? Yes? The most exciting thing on display at the Academy right now, I think it's the Metasepia, the flamboyant cuttlefish. You just don't see them. And then the other thing that's most exciting that will be on display again next week would be the Cephalopods, which is the broad-club cuttlefish, which was the first one I showed with all those flashing patterns. And they're usually not displayed anywhere because they can get up to 1/2 meter and weigh 10 kilograms if you believe the literature. So that's a big animal. That's the second biggest cuttlefish. So that's really exciting that we have that. And of course, my answer is going to be cephalopods because I think they're pretty. The reef tank's pretty cool too. The ghost pipefish, they're lame. No, we have ghost pipefish. We were able to collect some pregnant pairs and we brought them back, and they're pretty amazing. So if you get a chance to go down there, check them out. Any more?
Up here.
Up there, yes.
Do they feel pleasure or pain when they're having their sex?
Who knows? I don't know. They don't have really a face, so they can't make an O face. But maybe I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. That's an interesting question. Does the hectocotylus that the blanket octopus or that the argonaut releases have some kind of psychic pleasure that travels back to the dying miniature male? I don't know. I don't know. That's pretty cool stuff. One more, says Bart. What? Oh, and then I'll be down here. Who else? Anyone else? Yes.
Are there any instances of cross-species breeding?
Are there any instances of cross-species breeding? Not that I'm aware of, actually. Not with them, except for the dream of the fisherman's wife. We actually, though, this is so tangential, because when we were talking about ghost pipefish, we have 2 species of ghost pipefish right now. We have a pair of Paradoxus and a single female of Cyanopterus. Is that right? Yeah, drunk enough. And so we took the male from the one species and put it with the female of the other species, hoping to get some hot stuff, and nothing. Nothing at all. Well, that's a downer to end the whole thing on. So I'll be right over here if you have any more questions, and thank you for your attention, and enjoy the rest of your nerd night.
Thank you all so much. We're going to take a brief break, and we're going to come back in about 10 minutes for more than you ever wanted to know about bed bugs. If you have questions about octopi, come up here.